Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And we report a lot on Patrick Harvie because he's so worth the money, isn't he? He is absolute comedic gold. The one thing we have, of course, is that nothing he ever suggests will ever happen because it is that bad. But of course, we're going to talk about the heat pumps once again. And this time, everyone is ridiculing him because it's such a bad idea. But this particular ridiculing is coming from experts in the field who say that it will utterly destroy the rental market. It will put prices up. It will force people to be homeless. Simply to do what? To make no negligible difference at all in the environment. He will destroy entire sectors of the economy. He will destroy vast swathes of Scotland. And to achieve virtually nothing. Except, of course, spread his particular brand of poverty and misery. But then at the end of it, he can sit there, feel virtuous, and join a little circle jerk of Greens as they go, look what we've done. Meanwhile, there is a vast wasteland behind them. That is how dangerous these extreme left-wing Marxist fools truly are. But as I say, they're not going to be in government very much longer. They may even be out by the end of the week, who knows. But we'll take a look at this and see and laugh at the stupidity of Patrick Harvie and how he's got it wrong once again. Here goes. Now the headline really sums it up, doesn't it? Patrick Harvie's double whammy as his bombshell heat pump plan will make the rental crisis worse. Now we're going to hear from an expert in the field, which is not Harvie because he's not an expert on anything. He knows nothing about heat pumps. He knows nothing about physics. He doesn't know the physics of heat pumps. He doesn't understand the housing market. He doesn't understand particularly the nuances of the rental market. He doesn't understand the economy. He certainly doesn't understand people. And that is why everything he does is always destined to fail. He's a man without a single qualification and with very little life experience outside of the support of baby killers, be they Hamas or the IRA. Because that's all he's got. Miserable, loathing, self-loathing, loathing for other people. He is someone joyless, friendless, and without any kind of redeeming feature. And so his life mission is to spread misery. He must wake up in the morning, look in the mirror. I mean, it must be a hard thing to do, wake up in the mirror every morning. Wake up and look in the mirror every morning and see that face looking back at you. What a joyless little oik. But anyway, that's what he does. That's all he can do. He certainly is not a force for good, is he? Anyway, Patrick Harvie has been warned that his bombshell green heating plans will have a detrimental effect on his other ministerial portfolio. The Scottish Greens co-leader is in charge of the rent freeze, which was extended into next year, despite being a temporary COVID measure. It's been 2 years since COVID has been closed, and yet he continues to freeze the rents, driving many landlords out of the sector. This makes it much, much worse if you want to try and rent a property in Scotland. It's becoming horrendous. But that, of course, is deliberate policy by the imp. But the controversial legislation has not stopped a housing emergency being declared in Scotland's two biggest cities. That's because everyone's getting out of the rental market. With those living in Edinburgh and Glasgow struggling to find accommodation. Landlords blasted the policy amid claims that it drove hundreds of them out of the industry. Bada bing, just said. He's now been told that his push to make every property to have green heating systems installed by 2033, I will point out that this is impossible. Not enough engineers, not enough raw materials, not enough time. Certainly, they don't have the grid facility for it. It's bonkers. But it could damage the rental crisis and make it far worse. Mr. Harvie confirmed last week that landlords would be the first punished under the new system, and therefore the first to leave the market and make the housing system so bad. But that will be his legacy. Homelessness, destitution, and self-ending by people who cannot cope with what he's done to them. Anyway, he's saying that they could be fined for not getting rid of fossil fuel boilers, even though he lives in a flat that won't be suitable for heating by heat pump. So it's do as I say, not as I do. Hypocritical little turd that he is. Regular homeowners would also be given punishments for a failure to upgrade their houses and could face mortgage bans and expensive insurance bills. Rivals claim this would be a 10-year bombshell to regular Scots who can't afford to pay. They're quoting the £10,000 figure, try nearer 30 to 35, probably rising as high as 50 within 10 years, with inflation. Now the Greens Minister has been warned that more landlords will just leave the industry if they are faced with growing bills. A minimum energy efficient standard has been set out for the rented homes, which needs to be met within 5 years by the end of 2028, with domestic houses following by 2033. Let me point out that some houses are so old and so ill-built that they can never, regardless of what you do, meet those targets. David Alexander, head of lettings agency DJ Alexander, claimed that the costs of upgrading heating and insulation would cause more landlords to quit the sector, which would reduce the available housing stock and push up rents by double. I mean, he's just saying that. From experience, 35 years working in the construction industry, these rents would double. People find it hard enough now. And you're going, oh yes, but the rents will only go up to what the market can sustain. But since there's fewer rents, you're only going after a smaller market of those who can pay those rents. Those rents will rise and the landlords will get their money. He said few people disagree with the principle of these initiatives to introduce more green measures into our housing stock. I believe a lot of people disagree. I think he's being very kind there because they know that these heat pumps are inefficient. Putting them in is great in theory, but in practice it's awful. It's expensive. It's more expensive to run. The maintenance costs are higher. It doesn't produce heat hot enough to burn out the horrible diseases in the water like Legionnaires. Your house will then need secondary heating, which is a greater expense just to heat the house because the heat pumps isn't doing the job. You know, who come up with this brilliant idea? Oh yeah, someone who is who without a qualification. A moron. A moron. Anyway, it is the timing, the organisation, he said, and the funding which are questionable. A relatively short deadline of 5 years for the PRS could reduce the number of landlords wanting to stay in the sector. Equally, ensuring there's an element of threat in the consultation is unlikely to foster good relations with the sector. You threaten them, they leave. What happens? No rents. What happens to the people of Scotland who can't afford to buy? Well, there's always the streets, isn't there? Large investors will remain, but individuals may find this a step too far, and we may see an erosion in the number of properties available to rent. The inevitable result will be higher rents for tenants. Who does that benefit? Certainly not the tenants, even though he, the tit, would end up being one of those having to pay higher rents. He doesn't own his house. Rents in Scotland have skyrocketed, despite ministers introducing a freeze in September last year, and this was extended into next year with 3% cap on hikes for existing tenants. But this has led to landlords pushing up the price for new listings, with this leading to a rise of 14% of average rents year on year. That sounds a lot, however, if you go from when the rent cap was first introduced to today, that's actually lower than the inflation rate over the same period, and therefore, had they been allowed to increase by small amounts each year, it wouldn't have been that bad. But hey, this is what happens when morons are allowed to control and to make decisions. Put a moron in charge, you get a completely stupid result. I give you, ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Harvie. What a moron. Anyway, Mr. Alexander was scathing in his criticism of the consultation, which was launched by Mr. Harvie last week. He claimed the government had not been transparent in terms of how much each household will pay. £35,000 to £50,000 per house coming out of the economy, not going on anything else. Tell me, how do you think the economy will react when no one is buying anything or going anywhere? Wow, tumbleweeds. It's the end of Scottish economy. He said affordability is assumed to be built in, but it's not. It's a big assumption. But it is clear that homeowners will receive lower offers off their properties, acknowledged in the consultation, and they're asking buyers to add in an extra £100 a month. In one example contained in the paper, may seem reasonable to some, but could be the difference between an individual being able to afford a home or not. That's it. I've put a heat pump in, but it is a business. I put a heat pump in. I've got to get that money back. Okay, I'll put £100 a month on the rent. I can't afford that. That's fine. Someone else will. Bye. And out you go. And then they get the next guy in who can afford it. And over the months and years, whatever, that £100 a month will eventually pay the cost of the heat pump. Of course, the excess cost of running the heat pump is also down to the tenant, not the landlord. But hey, you makes your choices, and that's what it is. But there you go. Morons making decisions leading to moronic decisions. One followeth the other, methinks. Oh well, it's what happens when you keep voting these tits in, isn't it? There he is, a man of very little brains who comes up with the most stupid ideas. And people listen to him. It's a joke. It's never going to happen. Don't worry, folks. It ain't going to happen. He'll be out of power before any of this comes in. He's just enjoying the moment and having his little circle jerk of fun. Prick.